afternoon, everyone. Well, it's a rarity to talk to the chairman of ITC, and especially to talk to the chairman of ITC in Taj. But he's kind enough to talk to us in Taj after having eaten a meal which is not an ITC. So we're looking forward for an engaging conversation. And I'm going to first start with the Prime Minister's speech last evening on India. India is firing full cylinders. Looking at in your CI capacity and as the chairman of ITC, since you have a deep understanding of businesses, do you think 6 to 7% GDP growth for next couple of years is something which is not impossible, and it is something which is entirely possible and conceivable?
So first of all, thank you, Nikunj, for having me here. Yes, I think this is eminently possible. I think that's the kind of number we should be aiming for at the minimum. You see, growing at 7%, which is what is the estimate for the year and beyond this year, at a time when the whole world is struggling, when the global growth is the least in a long period, global trade is significantly lower than what it used to be at that time itself. We're growing at 7%. I think it's quite a commendable achievement, and that certainly gives us the confidence. And the confidence is not emanating, I think, just from numbers. The business confidence is not coming just by these GDP numbers. It is reflected in even the various CII surveys that have been happening with the business leaders on capacity utilization and confidence and so on and so forth. And, this is so because of this very strong foundation that is getting built over several years. A lot of very purposeful policy interventions have happened. If you look at the macros, our inflation, for example, is very well managed. There was a time when we had higher inflation than the developed economies. Today it's the reverse. That talks a lot about the astute management of the macros in the economy, the public infrastructure, digital infrastructure, the investments and the incentives to make India into a manufacturing hub. I think all these augur well for the future. There's also focus on the agriculture sector, the FPO, bringing technology. This budget talked about specific sectoral focused. Now focus is being brought in onto innovation. I think India is anyway a powerhouse of services, and we do have a demographic advantage. G20 has elevated India's stature in the new geopolitical dynamic. India is the center of attraction. It's very important from a supply chain diversification, and it's only India that has the talent and the competitive operating ecosystem and the scale to be able to provide that kind of supply chain diversification. We know that we have a lot of tourism assets. That's the new vector that we see from a policy perspective that is going to be pursued. And we do see in the budget and whatever the Honorable Prime Minister also said yesterday, that the commitment to making the policy framework better, dealing with some bigger ticket issues, the commitment and the intent is very much there. So I think, considering all of this, I think it's a very good time for India. It's certainly India's decade and probably even beyond that. So I see no reason why we should not be growing at least that number.
Mr. Puri, ITC is Bharat itself, from agri to hotel, from cigarette to FMCG to paper. Now, post-COVID, all kind of normal cases are being used to describe India and the rural economy. Since you connected with the rural economy, if I could encourage you to connect the dots and share with us that what is happening to the rural economy. If India is growing, why is the rural economy not growing? And if 20% of Indians are accounting for 80% of the consumption, but 80% of Indians still account for 20% of the consumption, if that will not grow, the base would be shaky.
So it's a very good point you have brought out. I think I think the way to look at is that I think the Indian economy and even the rural has been very resilient. I think your question emanates from the fact that in the reported numbers of GDP, the consumption growth has not been as much as one expects it to be. But I think I'm quite at one level reassured that the economy is resilient, it is growing, and it is growing after a spate of very serious challenges. It went through COVID. It went through huge amount of inflation on the geopolitical crisis on account of that. It has faced the brunt of extreme weather events, and we know there are some, there is a larger indexing to agriculture in the rural side. Despite that, it is resilient, it is growing, maybe not growing as much as we would like it to be, and it is so because I think a lot of good actions have happened. You see the infrastructure that's been created, the connectivity that the rurals have got, the focus on housing, the focus on digitization. I think the direct benefit transfer, the stuff like free food grain distribution. I think these are some of the very important steps taken in terms of the investment in the rural economy, and that's why we are seeing that it's quite resilient. Now, I see no reason why the growth rates will not progressively improve over a period of time. 1 or 2 good crop cycles, and we will see the whole situation completely turn. Because there is definitely a lot more potential there, and I'm quite optimistic that it's going to turn around sooner than later. There are a lot of actions also being taken to help farmers mitigate the impact of climate change. It's not easy, but some steps are already being taken. And all that, I think, certainly augurs well. And it's certainly going to, I think, perform much better going forward than we have experienced in the recent past. But in the backdrop of where we are, I think I would be quite reassured that it's resilient. It's fairly resilient and still continuing to grow.
So, Mr. Puri, 6 to 7% GDP growth, I add the inflation multiplier, that makes it 11 to 12% growth. ITC is always growing higher than the nominal GDP growth. So can I assume that if India will grow at 6 to 7%, ITC will continue to grow at 14 to 15% at least?
So I was not here for a ITC specific question, but nonetheless, let me say that the aspiration for is certainly that we should be growing much ahead of the rate of the growth of the economy, and anything that is connected with domestic consumption, very much doable, and that's what very much doable growth rates. But there are pieces that are also connected with the global context, so that's something to watch out for. That's in a way, at least for now, it's a dampener. But there is potential as far as the Indian economy is concerned, and that's how we are looking at it. That's how we are architecting our future. We are preparing our portfolio of growth not only for today, tomorrow, and day after. In our parlance, we say that we have a core portfolio which, given the growing consumption in India and the opportunity for penetration, opportunity for per capita consumption is huge. We're saying that we need to, on one hand, scale that up, to use that to address adjacencies, and 3 is also build categories of the future. Some of them start scaling them, some of them incubate them. And if I was to just give an example now that you've asked me this question. So if I look at our paperboard portfolio, we have the core portfolio is value-added paperboard, which we are continuing to scale up. The adjacency to that we have identified is what we call sustainable packaging, because the world is moving away from plastics. So these are proprietary coatings on our paperboard and other packaging solutions that we have. If I was to talk about categories of the future, these are again plastic substitute sustainable packaging, but the second platform is around complex and highly engineered shapes molded shapes out of plant fiber. So if I was to give you an example, there is a paperboard, there is a paper cup in which all of us drink tea, coffee, etc. Traditionally, it had a bio-seal inside. We replace it with it had a poly coating inside. I've replaced it with a proprietary bio-seal. But the cap, which is a complex shape and must be leak-proof, is still made out of plastic. So the second platform is going to develop a substitute to that, which is something that should start in March or April of this year. So that's the way we are looking at it. Similarly, if I look at my consumer business, there is our core portfolio of staples, biscuits, noodles, so on and so forth that we scale up. We use that to address adjacencies like Ashirwad is into frozen breads, into besan. And then we are incubating categories of the future like, chocolates, natural floor cleaner, and so on and so forth. So that's how, given the opportunity that is there in the Indian market, we're very optimistic, and that's how we are building our portfolio. And our confidence also is reflected in the fact that we commissioned 5 manufacturing facilities last year. We've started construction of 3 more this year. So the journey is continuing to participate and contribute to the growth of India.
What gives you this kind of confidence? You're investing into the future, you're incubating new businesses, you are taking market categories, you're challenging the existing players. What gives you this kind of confidence to invest and spend right now?
I think on one hand, it's the promise of the opportunity in the Indian market. I think the manner in which the policy interventions are being taken is certainly unlocking the potential of the economy. It's empowering the economy. And given the stage of development that we are, I think the headroom to grow is huge, and we see that potential getting unlocked. So we're very optimistic on the future in India. So that's the piece about the national opportunity. But equally, when you take this bets, it's important for you to see, are you competitive? Are you prepared or geared up to participate in the opportunities that come in? And I think that's where we continue to invest. And that's where we continue to leverage institutional capabilities, because in a competitive world, you need to bring something unique and superior onto the table. I think one of our strengths is the synergy from diversity of our businesses. So that's what we use. We recently launched a food tech business, bringing the capabilities of our foods business and hotels business together. So that's something unique that we bring onto the table. And then we are making deep investments for competitiveness around digital sustainability, around innovation, and making our supply chains. Traditionally we always looked at supply chains from an efficiency perspective of market servicing, but we are also investing a lot on building resilience from weather events. We don't have too much of a concern about supply chain disruptions globally because we are largely a make in India company. So that part is not an issue, but from weather events, we're working to make it resilient. So with these tools that we have put in place, I think we feel quite optimistic of the future.
So last but one question, Mr. Puri. This is 2024. Hypothetically, if we're in 2030, it is now GBS and we are having an interaction, what do you think we are likely to discuss? What could be the shape of India and what could be the shape of ITC 6 years from now? 6 years from now.
See, our aspiration is that we have to be growing at the top quartile. Aspiration is to be a leader in every segment. Some segment we are leaders. Where we are not, we would like to attain leadership. And when I say leadership, it's not merely about size or profitability. I think we would like to be acknowledged more importantly as a leader in terms of products that we provide to the market, the quality of service that we bring to the market, and a company that is not only creating economic value, but adding value to society by being a climate positive, inclusive enterprise, an innovative enterprise, and a future tech enterprise.
I'm just going to share with our viewers, just think about innovation when it comes to ITC. A tobacco company moves into paper, then comes into hotel, moves into FMCG. They've challenged, they've created market share, and they've used technology just to change the entire landscape per se. So Mr. Puri, 10,000 more SKUs, big in hotel brands, cigarette brands, paper business. How do you manage so much?
See, I think The solution to this lies in our strategy of organization. We have a distributed method. We have a system of distributed leadership with very clear governance, very clear degrees of freedom, very high level of empowerment to product market clusters, and we continuously review that and segment it even further, so that despite complexity and growth, the enterprise remains market-facing. It remains nimble, agile, and customer-centric. And what we do at the center is, besides mentoring and allocation of resources, is also to make sure that all the teams have access to the tools and technologies that they need to succeed. You know, we've invested ahead of time in the ITC Life Sciences and Technology Center, which is the largest private sector innovation center in India. And that resource is available to all the teams to tap into to meet the requirements of their customers. Similarly, we have created infrastructure, a whole infrastructure as far as digital is concerned. So every team is empowered through the right tools and processes. And with a distributed leadership, I think that's how we are able to manage and stay relevant and contemporary.
Now, I want everyone to take their pen and paper down. Mr. Puri saab se kuch recipes lete hain. So I met a speaker yesterday. He said that I have two options. I can die without eating dal bukhara, or I can eat dal bukhara and die. Right? Every time I come to Taj, they say the following, that we will match ITC hospitality, but we can never match the dal makhni at Bukhara. So kya recipe bata dijiye?
Even I don't know.
For all we know
You'll have to ask the custodian of Dal Bukhara, the chef there, he can only tell you.
All I can say is that, over the years I've tracked ITC, it's just been such a pleasure. The stock is at an all-time high, profit is at an all-time high, and the India story, the appeal, I think, is so extraordinary that it's such a joy tracking ITC and the way things are evolving. Thank you very much, Mr. Puri, and thank you for joining us today. Digital Pin.
Thank you, Nikunj. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Let's put your hands together for Sanjiv Puri, Chairman of ITC. Thank you very much, sir.